So in the last video, we looked at adding the picture to the file, creating these rule of thirds lines, kind of aligning our image so that lines within the image, focal points of the image are at the intersections and lines kind of follow these lines. So here's my sample. I have it set up now where, again, I'm kind of following that rule of thirds here. I have the mountain following this horizontal line in the background. I have some points of interest, kind of where these different mountains meet together. I have the train along this horizontal line. And again, that's not a steadfast dead rule that you need to follow every time, but it will kind of help you arrange your picture so that it looks the best that it can. Again, at the end of the last video, I showed you how to turn these guides off, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to View, Guides, and I could clear them to get rid of them totally, but I'm just going to hide them for now in case I decide I want them later for any reason. I'm going to go ahead and go to View, Guides, Hide Guides. So now they're here. So the next step of this project is to start deciding what gets traced. Now remember, with that atmospheric perspective thing that we talked about, the things that are closer to us show more detail. The further away we get, for two reasons, we kind of see less detail. One being just our eyes can only see so far. The other thing being, well, all these little particles are floating in the air, and the more of these particles that we have to look through, the less detail we see. So those little water droplets and all these particles floating in the air are kind of clouding our vision the further away we get. So less details further away, more details close up. So where I started with this one, and again, this is kind of like the finished blocked out version of this thing. It's all just pen shapes, but where I started was on the pieces that I knew I would need to do. Another little trick just to kind of show you, if you are in your layers and you want to turn on and off a bunch of things at a time, I'm going to hold my mouse down, and as I kind of run over these eyeballs like this, I can turn off a whole bunch of these at once. So that's useful as we're doing this thing because you're going to have a lot of stuff you're going to want to turn off. So let me turn all this off. So where I started then is I started on things like the sky. Now that was just a rectangle. I knew that would need to be there. And then again, once I was done tracing that, I just shut that off and I started tracing some of the other parts of this. And I just allowed these shapes to overlap each other, and again, I kept turning things on and off as I went. The other thing that I made sure I did, I gave these solid fill colors as I went. I didn't spend a whole lot of time picking what colors I would use, but I just gave them solid fill colors. That way I knew that the shapes were working the way that I wanted them to. Another thing you may notice in mine, outside of the sheet of paper, I don't really care what it looks like. You're never going to see that. If I were to turn all these on, so now the bridge, I knew I wanted a lot of detail. That's why you're going to kind of see a bunch of stuff start popping up in here. So let's kind of keep going here. And here's the train cars. Now I could also label all these if I have the time. I may go back and kind of fix some of this up. So there we go. So there is, kind of my finished blocked out project. So again, it's a lot of pen tool, a lot of taking my time. Things may be blurry. You're going to kind of have to decide where some lines are. Now when you're tracing a natural object like a mountain, I didn't have to follow their mountain exactly, the original. I just, roughly followed it, but at the same time, no one's ever going to see that original picture. So it's okay if I kind of change things a little bit if I want it to look a certain way. So that is pretty much blocking this thing out. And again, you're going to end up changing your mind on a lot of this stuff later once you start coloring things in. What I found out, and you'll see this in the next video, is that I actually kind of needed some more detail up close. So I ended up doing the shadow of the bridge and a couple other things that kind of really enhance this, but that is pretty much it. Again, what you're going to do is just take the pen, start blocking off individual shapes, and you may need to turn other shapes off as you go so you can kind of see what you're working on. If you want to see as you're going what this thing would look like, some of us have a little trouble visualizing this with the pieces sticking outside the lines. If you want to see it, you can go to File, Print, or even better, Save for Web and Devices. And that will show you it with the outsides kind of clipped off, showing you where you're at. So that is the initial part of this. Go ahead, block everything off. Again, give it solid fill colors as you go, and don't worry too much about what colors you pick because later you're going to turn all those things into gradients.